Imagine this, a peaceful night under the stars, laughter around a campfire. Then out of nowhere, a deafening roar splits the silence. Within minutes, 3 lives are lost. What went so terribly wrong? And how did one lion create such devastation? In this video, we'll uncover the chilling events of November 1st, 2024, a day that left wildlife researchers and experts shaken. This is the story of a lion that killed 3 people in just 7 minutes, serving as a haunting reminder of the thin line between human curiosity and nature's danger. This tragic encounter is one of many that highlight what happens when people underestimate the wild, whether it's seasoned researchers, adventurous tourists, or families looking for a peaceful escape. Let's begin with the story of 3 researchers on what should have been a routine expedition, but instead became a night they would never escape. It was a calm evening on the East African savanna. The golden light of twilight stretched across the horizon as 3 experienced researchers, Martin Hughes, Emily Carter, and Dr. Ben Thompson, set up camp near a riverbed. The trio had spent the day tracking wildlife movement, a routine part of their work. Years of experience gave them confidence. They believed they knew how to handle the dangers of the wild. What they didn't realize was that their campsite was dangerously close to an active lion pride, and a predator was already watching them. By nightfall, the researchers had settled in. A simple meal cooked over an open flame filled the air with the scent of food, mixing with the sound of laughter as they shared stories around the fire. For a moment, it felt peaceful, safe even. But not far from their camp, a solitary male lion was prowling. The animal was old, thin, and starving, a predator driven by desperation. Drawn by the smell of food and the sound of voices, it crept closer, silent and unseen in the tall grass. It all happened in an instant. One moment, the researchers were laughing. The next, a deafening roar shattered the stillness of the night. Out of the darkness, the lion charged. Martin, panicked, bolted toward the river, but the lion was faster. It tackled him, its powerful jaws clamping down on his shoulder. His screams echoed through the night as Emily and Ben froze in horror. Ben grabbed a flashlight, desperately trying to distract the lion by shouting and waving the beam of light. But the predator was relentless. It dragged Martin's lifeless body into the bushes, disappearing into the darkness. Emily ran toward the truck, her heart pounding as she fumbled with the keys. Behind her, Ben picked up a metal pole and charged toward the lion in a last-ditch effort to protect his friend. But the lion turned its attention to him, knocking him to the ground with a single swipe. Ben's screams filled the air as the animal mauled him mercilessly. Emily finally started the truck and threw it into reverse. But before she could escape, the lion leapt onto the hood, its claws scraping against the windshield. The weight of the beast caused the truck to veer wildly before tipping onto its side with a thunderous crash. When rescue teams arrived the next morning, they were met with a horrific scene. Martin's body lay torn near the riverbank. Ben was found lifeless near the campsite, still clutching the metal pole he'd used to fight the lion. Emily was discovered in the overturned truck, her lifeless form still trapped inside. The lion was never found, but its actions left a chilling reminder. Even the most experienced are not immune to the unpredictable power of the wild. Tragically, this wasn't the only encounter where humans underestimated the dangers of nature. Next, we look at a safari group who broke the rules and paid a steep price for it. The East African savanna stretched endlessly under the fading light of the evening. 3 researchers, Martin Hughes, Emily Carter, and Dr. Ben Thompson, had spent the day tracking wildlife. They were experts, seasoned by years of fieldwork, and believed they knew the risks of the wild. But the wild doesn't care about experience, and tonight they had unknowingly set up their camp near the territory of a hungry predator. As the sun set, the camp was calm. The 3 sat around the campfire, eating a simple meal and sharing stories. Laughter filled the air as the flames flickered, casting shadows on their faces. They felt safe, unaware of the danger lurking just beyond the glow of the fire. In the tall grass nearby, a male lion watched silently. It was old, thin, and desperate. Its ribs jutted through its golden coat, and it hadn't eaten in days. Drawn by the scent of food and the sound of human voices, it moved closer, step by silent step. Then it happened. A roar tore through the night, freezing the researchers in place. Before they could react, the lion charged, emerging from the darkness like a shadow brought to life. Martin was the first to move, sprinting toward the river in panic. But the lion was faster. It pounced, dragging him to the ground. His screams echoed into the night as Emily and Ben watched in horror. Ben acted quickly, grabbing a flashlight and shouting to scare the lion away. But it was no use. The lion turned its massive frame toward him, its glowing eyes locked on its next target. Emily, paralyzed by fear, stood frozen as Ben fought back with a metal pole. But with one swipe, the lion knocked him to the ground and mauled him viciously. Emily finally snapped out of her shock and ran to the truck. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the keys, the roars and screams growing louder behind her. Just as she started the engine, the lion leapt onto the hood. Its claws scraped against the windshield as the truck tilted dangerously and flipped onto its side. Emily was trapped. The next morning, rescue teams arrived to a horrifying sight. Martin's lifeless body lay near the riverbank. Ben was found near the campsite, still clutching the pole he'd tried to use against the lion. Inside the overturned truck, they found Emily, lifeless, still trapped in the wreckage. The lion was never found. Experts believe it was an outcast, desperate and starving, driven to attack. But the aftermath of that night was a grim reminder. No matter how skilled you are, the wild is unpredictable and unforgiving. And this was just one tragedy. Next, we follow a group of tourists who broke one simple rule and paid a terrible price for it. The morning was calm and beautiful on the African savanna. A group of excited tourists climbed into a safari jeep, ready for an unforgettable experience. Their guide, David McAllister, a seasoned expert, reminded them of one rule: stay inside the vehicle. But for three tourists, Alex, Megan, and Tyler, watching from a distance wasn't enough. They wanted something more thrilling, something closer, and they ignored the warnings that were meant to keep them safe. At first, the safari went smoothly. The jeep rolled through the tall grass, giving the group a front-row view of elephants at a watering hole, antelopes grazing in the distance, and giraffes stretching to reach the treetops. Then they reached the highlight of their tour, a pride of lions resting under the shade of a large acacia tree. The male lion lay in the center, his golden mane shimmering in the sunlight, while lionesses lounged nearby and cubs played in the grass. The sight was breathtaking, and cameras clicked as everyone admired the scene from a safe distance. But for Alex, Megan, and Tyler, it wasn't enough. They whispered to each other, glanced at the guide, and then quietly slipped out of the jeep, cameras in hand. At first, the lions didn't react. The male flicked his tail, the cubs tumbled around, and the tourists moved closer, crouching in the tall grass. But then the male lion lifted his head, his amber eyes narrowing as he focused on the intruders. The air grew tense. The lion stood slowly, his muscles rippling under his coat. Alex, Megan, and Tyler froze, finally realizing the danger. But it was too late. The lion charged, covering the ground in seconds. Tyler, the closest, barely had time to scream before the lion tackled him. Its powerful claws tore into his back as Megan and Alex tried to run. Megan stumbled, dropping her camera, while Alex sprinted toward the jeep. Megan's cries filled the air as the lion turned on her next. David, the guide, acted fast. He grabbed a metal rod and rushed toward the lion, shouting and swinging the pole. For a moment, the lion hesitated, its attention shifting between Megan and David. Alex made it back to the jeep, pulling the door open with trembling hands. Inside, the other tourists sat frozen in fear, helplessly watching as David tried to save Megan and Tyler. The lion finally turned on David, knocking him to the ground with a powerful swipe. Just when it seemed the nightmare couldn't get worse, gunshots rang out. Park rangers had arrived, and the sound of rifles scared the lion back into the tall grass. The surviving tourists scrambled into the jeep, their faces pale with shock. Tyler and Megan were rushed to safety, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would stay with them forever. David, though injured, had risked everything to protect his group. He survived, but the memory of that day would haunt him. All it took was one decision to step out of the jeep for chaos to unfold. The wild doesn't offer second chances. But for some, even following the rules can't always keep them safe. Next, we meet a family on a peaceful camping trip. one that turned into a desperate fight for survival. The Anderson family was looking forward to a quiet weekend away from the city. Tom, Lisa, and their two children, 10-year-old Emily and 7-year-old Jacob, set up camp near a wildlife reserve. It felt like the perfect spot: tall acacia trees for shade, other campers nearby, and trails to explore. Despite warnings from locals to secure their food, the family didn't think much of it. Snacks and marshmallows were left out, the cooler was kept near their tent, and the warm glow of a campfire set the scene for a night of laughter and bonding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the family roasted marshmallows. Their laughter carried on the breeze. But they weren't alone. A male lion, starving and desperate, had been wandering near the edge of the reserve. It caught the scent of food drifting through the air and followed it straight to the Andersons' camp. The family had no idea they were being watched. The lion crouched low in the tall grass, its eyes locked on the glow of the fire and the movements around it. It waited, patient and silent, until the moment was right. The first sign of danger was a low growl from the shadows. Before anyone could react, the lion charged into the campsite. Chairs flew, the cooler tipped over, and Tom jumped to his feet as Emily and Jacob screamed in terror. Lisa grabbed the kids, pulling them toward the tent, but the lion's roar stopped everyone in their tracks. It wasn't interested in the food anymore. Its hunting instincts were triggered by the movement and noise. Tom acted fast. He grabbed a burning log from the fire and swung it toward the lion, shouting to keep it back. The flames made the lion hesitate for a moment, but it wasn't enough. The lion charged again, this time swiping at Tom and knocking him to the ground. Lisa screamed for the kids to run to the car. Emily and Jacob sprinted toward safety, but Jacob tripped and fell. The lion turned toward him, its powerful body ready to strike. Lisa ran back for her son, dragging him up just in time to get him into the car. Meanwhile, Tom, injured but determined, swung the flaming log again, trying to distract the lion. The lion eventually backed off, but not before slashing Tom across his arm and chest. He managed to crawl into the car, slamming the door as the lion roared and clawed at the window. Inside, the family sat shaking and silent, too terrified to move. When morning finally came, the lion was gone. The Andersons packed their things and left. Their dream vacation turned into a nightmare. The other campers who had witnessed the chaos also decided it wasn't worth the risk and quickly left. The Andersons were lucky to survive, but their experience was a harsh reminder. Even small mistakes like leaving food out can draw predators and turn a peaceful night into a fight for survival. But sometimes even the most prepared can find themselves at the mercy of the wild. Next, we follow a ranger leading a walking safari and the tragedy that unfolded when instincts took over. Joseph, a veteran park ranger, had spent 25 years guiding tourists safely through the wild. On this day, he was leading a small group on a walking safari, teaching them about the wonders of the African savanna. Among the group were Paul Jenkins and his teenage son Derek. Paul was confident, even joking, that this would be the highlight of their trip. Joseph reminded everyone of the rules: stay close, stay quiet, and follow instructions immediately if they encountered any wildlife. Most of the group listened, but for Paul and Derek, those rules didn't seem all that serious. The walk started peacefully. The group spotted zebras grazing in the distance, antelope darting through the brush, and a herd of warthogs scurrying across their path. Everything seemed calm until Joseph noticed something unusual: fresh lion tracks in the dirt. His experience told him exactly what they were: a lioness, and from the size of the smaller tracks beside hers, she wasn't alone. She had cubs nearby. Joseph's posture stiffened as he signaled for the group to stop and whispered instructions to back away quietly. The group began retreating, their earlier excitement now replaced with unease. But then, disaster struck. Derek, distracted, stumbled over a tree root and hit the ground with a loud thud. The sound broke the fragile peace. In an instant, a lioness emerged from the bushes. Her sharp eyes locked onto the group, her body tense and ready to protect her cubs. Joseph knew what was about to happen, but there was no time to stop it. The lioness charged, her powerful frame moving with terrifying speed. Derek screamed as the lioness tackled him, her claws pinning him to the ground. Paul rushed to help his son, But the lioness turned on him next, slashing his arm and knocking him down. The rest of the group froze in panic. Some tried to run, others stood paralyzed with fear. Joseph acted quickly. He grabbed a flare from his belt, igniting it with a sharp hiss. The burst of light and smoke startled the lioness for a moment, but her instincts were too strong. She stayed close, ready to defend her cubs at all costs. In the chaos, two other tourists panicked and ran. The sudden movement caught the lioness's attention, and she lunged after them. Victor and Emma, two members of the group, didn't stand a chance. Within seconds, the lioness had caught up to them, her claws tearing into their backs. Joseph used the brief moment of distraction to shout for the rest of the group to retreat toward the ranger station. But by the time help arrived, it was too late. Victor and Emma were gone, and Derek, though alive, was critically injured. Paul sat by his son's side trying to stop the bleeding, his face pale with shock. Derek was rushed to the nearest hospital, but he didn't make it. The lioness, acting purely on instinct, had claimed 3 lives in a matter of minutes. The survivors were left haunted by what they had witnessed. Joseph had done everything he could, but the wild is unpredictable, and sometimes even the most experienced can't prevent tragedy. For those who survived, the lesson was clear. Nature demands respect, and any mistake in its domain can have devastating consequences. But not all encounters end with tragedy. In the next story, a group of photographers learned the hard way that getting too close to the perfect shot can come with a deadly price. Early one morning, a team of wildlife photographers set out into the African savanna, eager to capture stunning shots of lions in their natural habitat. Michael Hayes, a seasoned photographer, led the group, which included Sophie Whitman, Jack Rivera, and David Chen. The light was perfect. The golden hues of dawn illuminated the landscape, setting the stage for a perfect shoot. As they arrived at a well-known lion territory, a park ranger gave them a stern warning. Lions with cubs can be unpredictable. Keep your distance. But Michael and his team were too focused on their goal. They ventured deeper, edging closer to a pride resting under an acacia tree. The scene was breathtaking. A dominant male lion lay in the center, surrounded by lionesses, while 2 playful cubs rolled in the grass. Cameras clicked as the photographers captured every detail. But in their quest for the perfect shot, they crossed an unspoken boundary. David set up his tripod just a little too close, ignoring the subtle warning signs. The male lion flicked his tail sharply and raised his head, his amber eyes locking onto the photographers. Tension filled the air, but the team kept shooting, unaware that they were pushing the lion's patience to its limit. Suddenly, the lion let out a deep growl. Before anyone could react, it charged. David, who was closest, was the first to fall. The lion tackled him, its powerful claws tearing into his back. His screams pierced the still morning air. The others froze in shock. Sophie tried to step back, but her tripod caught on her ankle, sending her tumbling to the ground. The lion turned to her next, pinning her beneath its massive weight as she struggled helplessly. Jack, panicked, tried to run, but the lion's instincts kicked in. It sprang toward him, knocking him down before he could reach the safety of the vehicle. Within minutes, 3 photographers were down, their bodies battered and broken beneath the lion's relentless assault. Michael, the team leader, knew he had to act. Trembling, he grabbed a flare from his bag and lit it. The sudden burst of light and noise startled the lion, forcing it to pause. Seizing the moment, Michael shouted for the remaining photographers to run. They sprinted toward the Jeep, their hearts pounding with every step. From the safety of the vehicle, they watched as the lion stood guard over the fallen photographers, roaring as if to defend its territory. The survivors alerted park authorities, who arrived shortly after. But for David, Sophie, and Jack, it was too late. Their pursuit of beauty had cost them their lives. For Michael and the surviving team, the experience was devastating. The photos they had risked everything to capture now felt tainted by tragedy. The incident sparked a heated debate about the risks photographers take and the boundaries that should never be crossed. The wild doesn't forgive, and for some, it offers no second chances. In the next story, even children on a school trip found themselves at the mercy of nature's unforgiving instincts. It was meant to be a fun and educational day for a group of school children. On a sunny morning in October 2024, 30 students from a South African elementary school boarded a bus to visit a nearby wildlife reserve. Teachers and parent volunteers worked together to make sure everyone had hats, cameras, and notebooks for the trip. The reserve was known for its open savanna and thriving lion pride. As the children arrived, their excitement filled the air. Rangers Simon Matten and Grace Bennett greeted the group and gave them a safety briefing. Stay together, keep quiet, and never cross the marked boundaries. Most listened carefully, but as we've seen before, curiosity can sometimes outweigh caution. The tour began with awe-inspiring moments. The children spotted zebras grazing, wildebeests running in the distance, and even a family of warthogs darting across the trail. Simon captivated the kids with stories about the animals' behaviors, while Grace kept a watchful eye at the back of the group, ensuring no one wandered too far. The highlight of the day came when they reached a lion pride resting under a large tree. From their safe viewing spot, the students could see a male lion lying majestically in the center, surrounded by lionesses and playful cubs. Cameras clicked, and whispers of excitement spread through the group. But three parent volunteers, David, Angela, and Mark, wanted a closer look. Despite the rangers' repeated warnings, they stepped over the boundary with their phones in hand, eager to capture the perfect photo. At first, the lions didn't react. The male lion flicked his tail, his eyes half closed as if indifferent. Encouraged by this, the parents crept closer, their footsteps crunching softly on the dry grass. But the lion wasn't relaxed, it was watching. The flicking tail was a warning. As the parents moved closer, the male lion suddenly rose, its sharp eyes fixed on the intruders. A low growl rumbled through the air. In a split second, the lion charged. David, standing closest, barely had time to react before he was knocked to the ground. His screams shattered the silence, sending the children into a panic. Teachers rushed to shield the kids, while Grace ignited a flare to distract the lion. But the beast wasn't done. It turned to Angela next, lunging with terrifying speed. She fell hard, crying out as the lion's claws tore into her shoulder. Mark, frozen with fear, tried to back away, but the lion pounced on him next, pinning him to the ground. Grace and Simon acted quickly, using flares and shouting to drive the lion back toward its pride. Backup rangers arrived soon after, firing warning shots to keep the lion at bay. But the damage was already done. David, Angela, and Mark were lifeless, their bodies left where they fell. The children, still crying and shaken, were rushed back to the visitor center. Emergency counselors were brought in to help them process the trauma. But no words could erase what they had seen. For many, it was the first time they understood how brutal nature could be. The school trip made headlines, sparking a heated debate. Should children be allowed so close to wild predators? Could stricter rules have prevented the tragedy? One thing was certain: the wild is not a playground, and even the smallest mistake can have devastating consequences. As we reflect on all these stories, one question remains: can humans truly respect the boundaries of nature? Or will we keep pushing until the wild pushes back? Each of these stories is a chilling reminder of the fine line between human curiosity and the unforgiving power of the wild. From researchers to tourists, families, and even children, these encounters show how quickly a moment of carelessness or an act of overconfidence can turn into tragedy. The lion doesn't see rules, boundaries, or intentions. It acts on instinct, shaped by survival in a world where every day is a battle. For humans, these wild spaces may feel like thrilling adventures or places of beauty. But for the animals, it's their home, and they will defend it. Think of the Anderson family huddled in their car, praying the lion would leave, or the school children watching helplessly as a peaceful lesson turned into chaos. These moments are sobering reminders of the respect we owe to the creatures we admire. The wild isn't something to conquer or control. It's something to honor and approach with humility. These tragedies also raise difficult questions. How far should we go in our pursuit of adventure? Should tighter rules and stronger boundaries exist? Or is it human nature to push limits, even when the risks are clear? The lion from November 1st, 2024, was never found. Some believe it still roams the savannah, waiting silently for its next chance to strike. But whether or not that's true, one thing is certain: the wild will always remind us of its untamed power, no matter how much we think we understand it.